Hello, welcome to the Daily News Ukraine channel. Today is January 3rd and our daily review of news about Ukraine. The Russian invaders shelled 20 settlements in Zaporizhzhia region on January 2nd. The Zaporizhzhia Regional Military Administration wrote this on Telegram, Ukrinform reports. Over the past day, the occupiers shelled the civilian infrastructure in the areas of Malinivka, Chervon, Sherbaki, Dorozhnyenka, Poltavka, Novoandrivka, Mala Tokmachka, Uspanivka, Huliapol, Ochakiv, Primorsk, Stepov, Novodanilivka, Cherivn, Novopavlivka, Olhivsk, Bilohirya, Zaliznyk, Kamiansk, and Plavny, the administration said. 9 reports were received about damaged civilian houses, apartments, and infrastructure facilities by the Russian shelling. During the past day, the evacuation of the civilian population from the temporarily occupied territory was not carried out. As reported, the invaders shelled Nikopol and the Pokrovsk community in Dnipropetrovsk region with Grad MLRS and heavy artillery last night. Photo, illustrative I. The armed forces of Ukraine have already eliminated about 108,190 Russian troops in Ukraine from February 24 to January 3, including 750 over the past day alone. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said this in a post on Facebook, according to Ukrinform. The enemy's total combat losses include also 3,036 tanks, plus 5 over the past day, 6,100 armored combat vehicles, plus 7, 2,033 artillery systems, plus 6, 424 multiple launch rocket systems, plus 1, 214 air defense systems, plus 1, 283 warplanes, 270 helicopters, plus 1, 4,735 motor vehicles, plus 10, 16 warships/cutters, 1,839 unmanned aerial vehicles, plus 3, 181 special equipment units. A total of 723 enemy cruise missiles were shot down. As Ukrinform reported, in the settlement of Ochakiv, Kherson region, the Russian invaders suffered major losses. It has now been confirmed that on December 31, about 500 Russian service members were killed and wounded by strikes of units of Ukraine's defense forces. Russian troops struck the water area and the coastal zone of the Ochakiv community in Mykolaiv region. Head of the Mykolaiv Regional Military Administration Vitaly Kim wrote this on Telegram, Ukrinform reports. Yesterday, January 2nd, at 10:34, 11:18, 18:10, the enemy struck the water area and the coastal zone of the Ochakiv community. There are no casualties, he said. At the same time, Kim added that the day and night were relatively calm in the city of Mykolaiv and the Pervomaisk, Voznesensk and Bashtanka districts. As earlier reported, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the enemy launched 6 missile attacks, 52 airstrikes, and 77 MLRS attacks on January 2nd. The Russian invaders shelled Nikopol and the Pokrovsk community in Dnipropetrovsk region overnight. Head of the Dnipropetrovsk Regional Military Administration wrote this on Telegram, Ukrinform reports. The shelling of the Nikopol district is not abating. The district was struck by Russian Grad systems and heavy artillery twice during the night. More than 20 shells landed in Nikopol and the Pokrovsk community. People were not injured, he wrote. Representatives of the State Emergency Service are examining the affected areas. They are investigating the consequences of the attacks. In other districts, an air raid alert was announced only once, but there were no emergency situations. It is calm as of now, Reznichenko added. As reported, the enemy attacked the Dnipropetrovsk region with missiles, kamikaze drones, and heavy artillery the day before. In the area of Ochakiv, Kherson region, the Russian invaders suffered major losses. It has now been confirmed that on December 31, about 500 servicemen of the Russian Federation were killed and wounded by Ukrainian strikes. This is stated in the update by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine posted on its Facebook page. The enemy continues to suffer losses. On December 31, units of Ukraine's defense forces confirmed fire damage to enemy personnel and military equipment in the Cholakivka settlement of Kherson region. Enemy losses amounted to about 500 WIAs and Kias, the statement reads. Read also, winter months to be difficult, but Ukraine has advantages. Stratcom. At the same time, it is noted that on January 1, 2023, units of Ukraine's defense forces inflicted fire damage on Russian occupation forces personnel in the area of Fedorivka, Kherson region, where the death toll is currently being verified. From February 24 to January 2, Ukraine Army eliminated about 107,440 Russian invaders, including 720 in the previous day alone. Austria advocates ending Russia's war against Ukraine through negotiations, but such talks are possible only with Ukraine's participation and never without it. According to Ukrinform's own correspondent, this was stated by Minister of Foreign Affairs of Austria, Alexander Schallenberg, who spoke at a press conference in Vienna on Monday following negotiations with his Indian counterpart. Peace is never achieved on the battlefield. Peace is always achieved at the negotiating table. And this war will be no exception. But indeed, both sides need to agree to negotiate. And here one rule is clear: no negotiations on Ukraine without Ukraine, noted Schallenberg. Read also, Austrian Parliament on Holodomor, terrible crime. Against this background, the Austrian minister referred to a 10-point peace formula offered by Ukraine. Interesting. He added that it is necessary to restore the situation where peace and diplomacy can find their place. But at the moment I don't see it happening because both sides are trying to score decisive points on the battlefield, said Schallenberg. The minister also pointed out that the war unleashed by Russia is taking place on European soil, but it is by no means European, as its consequences are global in nature, and millions of people around the world are suffering due to rising prices, as well as food and energy crises. As reported, Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said that Ukraine plans to hold by late February 2023 an international summit to discuss the peace formula proposed by President Volodymyr Zelensky. Bjorn Stritzel, a journalist with the German publication Bild, sustained a shrapnel wound while covering the Russian war in Ukraine. Bild editor-in-chief Johannes Boy broke the news on Twitter on Monday, Ukrinform reports. Bild reporter Bjorn Stritzel has been injured by shrapnel covering Russian aggression in Ukraine. He's safe as possible, and the injury is not too bad. However, this is a reminder of all the hardship reporters in Ukraine are going through to tell the truth. Thank you, tweeted Boy. In turn, Stritzel suggests that he was injured by shrapnel as the Russian strike could target the train station. I am fine, just a cut on the forehead, most likely by glass splinter. Was having dinner when the blast happened, not quite sure about the ordnance, haven't found any debris yet, he tweeted. At Stritzel, according to the journalist, the target was most likely a train station located around the corner. At the same time, he noted that he did not see any big impact site yet, as one would expect for missiles with a bigger warhead. He also suggested that the explosions could have been caused by a strike drone. The State Regulatory Service has drafted a bill proposing to increase by at least 100 times fines for officials guilty of excessive administrative pressure on businesses. This was announced by the head of the SRS, Oleksiy Kuker, who spoke in an interview with Ukrinform. We have an imbalance between responsibility for violations in state-business relations. If entrepreneurs disregard law, they face a fine of hundreds of thousands of hryvnias. If it is an official, then it's a fine of just 170 to 340. And this is provided that the court will bring this official to justice. We've decided to fix this injustice, he said. Read also, Ukraine plans to become associate member of OECD as early as 2023. The head of the SRS emphasized that the agency has already drafted a bill, which provides for changes to the Code of Administrative Offenses, offering to raise fines for officials guilty of excessive administrative pressure on businesses by at least 100 times, from 170 to 340 to 17,000 to 34,000. Discussions are currently underway regarding the final amount. Besides, we have a presumption of innocence for a civil servant, and the opposite for businesses. That is, an official issues a fine to a businessman, who must pay it. If they disagree, they are obliged to defend their position in court, he clarified. The document also proposes to grant the state regulatory service the right to impose a fine on an official beyond litigation and, if an official disagrees, they may appeal the move. Kucker is convinced that this is necessary in order for there to be parity of responsibility. The draft law is set to be submitted to the Cabinet of Ministers for approval this year. As reported, since the full-scale invasion, the State Regulatory Service has saved UAH 18.1 billion for businesses and UAH 284.3 million for the state by refusing to approve draft regulatory acts that failed to comply with Ukrainian legislation. On the evening of January 2, the Russians launched 2 missile attacks on the town of Drushkivka, Donetsk region, as a result of which the Altair ice arena was destroyed. This is reported by Ukrinform with reference to the website of the Donbass Hockey Club. As a result of a missile strike, the Altair ice arena was destroyed. It was this site that had been hosting the Donbass Hockey Club since 2014. At the Drushkivka-based venue, the largest hockey and figure skating schools operated in Ukraine. The arena hosted championships of Ukraine, international competitions, art and mass events, being a favorite leisure site for the residents and guests of Drushkivka, reads a statement posted on the website of Donbass HC. According to the report, this is already the third home that the Donetsk-based club has lost due to the Russian occupiers, the Druzhba Sports Palace in Donetsk, Mariupol Ice Center, and now Altair. Read also, as Iranian-made drones keep attacking Ukraine, Tehran says not party to war. Donbass HC are 8-time champions of Ukraine. They won the cup for the first time in 2011. As Ukrinform reported earlier, the Russian forces struck Kramatorsk late Monday evening. Photo, hcdonbase.com. Iran denies that, by supporting Russia, it is actually acting as one of the parties to the war in Ukraine. This was stated by the spokesman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Iran, Nasser Kanaani, writes Xinhua, according to Ukrinform. Iran is not a part of the conflict in Ukraine, and baseless accusations against Iran will not help solve the issue, Nasser Kanaani said during a press conference. According to the spokesperson, Ukraine and Iran officially exchanged views on the issue. Iran's defense cooperation with other countries is based on common interests and is carried out in compliance with international laws and regulations, Kanaani said. Read also, Zelensky on possible new Russian attacks. Now everyone involved in protection of sky should be especially attentive. He claimed that Iran and Russia carried out defense cooperation before the start of hostilities in Ukraine. As reported earlier, despite massive evidence proving Russia's use of Iranian-made one-way attack drones against civilian and military targets in Ukraine, Tehran keeps denying that the UAVs were handed over to Russia. In the first 2 days of 2023 alone, Russia launched some 80 drones at Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky, in an address to the nation on January 2, said Russia plots to proceed with attacking Ukraine with drones in a bid to exhaust air defenses and inflict maximum damage on energy infrastructure. Today we were talking about those news. Russians shell 20 settlements in Zaporizhzhia region over past day. Russian military death toll in Ukraine exceeds 108,000. Enemy attacks water area of Mykolaiv region's Ochakiv community 3 times over past day. Invaders shell Nikopol with Grad MLRS and heavy artillery, 20 explosions recorded. Russians suffer significant losses in Kherson region, nearly 500 casualties. There can be no talks on Ukraine without Ukraine. MFA Austria. Bild reporter covering Russian war injured in Ukraine. Officials responsible for excessive pressure on businesses to face bigger fines. Watchdog chief. Invaders destroy the ice arena of 8-time Ukraine hockey champions Donbass HC. As Iranian-made drones keep attacking Ukraine, Tehran says not party to war.